1. This happened last week, but it's so absurdly stupid that I can't get it out of my head. I work for a retail phone company in a small town with a relatively high senior population. The only people who work at this store are me and my single coworker. This was a relatively busy day compared to what we usually deal with. But it's no biggie, we were doing bill pays, selling phones, the usual. While I was setting up another customer's phone that she had just bought, this old couple walks in. The guy was this taller man with a US veteran's cap on, with a flip phone, and he was open carrying a handgun on his left hip. I wasn't paying them any attention, and my coworker got up to assist them, and they both walk up to the counter and are here to pay their bill. The account comes up as some woman's named Zoe, and my coworker asked for ID to verify their account. Oh boy. This is when I heard the old man get audibly aggravated and say in an annoyed, angry tone, "Zoe is a poodle." Huh? Turns out this guy made an account under his dog's name instead of his own or his wife's, because the flip phone was a burner phone. Then he starts going off in this tangent rant about something regarding people being able to walk around the country and vote for the president? I didn't catch all of it, as I was still helping this woman and her husband with this new phone. We have a method to pay the phone bill without getting into the account, which my coworker tried, to no avail, because the old guy didn't even bring his flip phone with him. I ended up switching with my coworker to deal with him, and he started complaining that the internet and phone services are how the Nazis get your information and hack you, which is why the account is under his dog's name. Again, his dog. Whatever. I ended up breaking policy by just entering a random ID. It doesn't get saved, it's just a way to prevent fraud. I've seen this guy a while back and his wife before for something else, so I knew it was in the clear anyways. Gets his bill paid. Try to get his name or his wife's name on the account, but he refuses to give out any information. I just tell him we're done here and they leave. My coworker texts one of our higher-ups, and he calls back and is in massive disbelief. We told him that the bill was paid, and he replied going forward, do the quick pay option, and he has to have his phone on him before we can do any payments. Lovely. I just want to know what employee in their right mind let him make an account under a dog's name, because I want to whack them in the face. Two, context. I'm 25 and non-binary. I've worked in a supermarket for the past 5 years. I'm physically disabled and cannot heavy lift, and that, plus me being a big people person, has resulted in me being the store's most experienced customer service employee. I'm also autistic, important for later. Let me tell you about this customer. Big, beefy, 6'3" maybe, older guy. Comes up to the desk with a gift card and receipt. Says he wants a refund because the gift card is damaged. I look at it, and you know the little barcode with numbers you're supposed to scratch off with a coin? He had peeled it off instead. Easy mistake to make. Now our policy is black and white. We cannot refund or exchange gift cards at all. The company whose gift card it was hold that power. In this case, it was a Spotify gift card. However, I try to see if I can compensate the customer if I can. So I apologize and inform him of our policy and tell him I'll call over my manager to see if we can figure something out for him. He says no, it's damaged and I have the receipt. I want a refund. Again, I remind him of our policy and that my manager will see what we can do. In the meantime, I inspect the card further and recognize what he's done, so while I wait for my manager to arrive, I get a coin from the till and start scratching the code. It was potentially salvageable, and I tell him he might be able to use it after all. For some reason, this guy just wasn't having it. He started repeating himself, saying, "No, I'm saying it's damaged." I mirror back at him, "Yes, it is damaged, I can see that." A little confused as to what he wasn't understanding. At this point, my manager arrives in time to witness the customer stop, stare at me and go, "You're being incredibly rude right now." To which I go, "No, I'm not. I just repeated what you told me. It's damaged." He goes, "No, you were being rude. You're saying I damaged it." Now, At no point did I say that he damaged it, despite it being obviously clear the mistake he'd made. I repeated his own words back to him. It's damaged, not you damaged it. I didn't accuse him of anything, he jumped to conclusions. I think it's important to note I do get accused of being rude sometimes due to my being autistic. I have resting bitch face and a very monotone voice when I'm not masking, which I usually am while working. I've been accused on multiple occasions of acting and sounding like a robot. It really sucks, which is why I tend to mask, unfortunately, at work. So perhaps this is why he thought I was being rude. Continuing. During this back and forth, my delightfully useless manager interrupts to repeat what I already told the customer regarding our policy. As I'm defending myself, I attempt to tell the customer that I was not insinuating anything and didn't mean to offend. However, before I can even get the words out, this pig of a man turns back to me, raises his finger to his mouth and goes, "Shh!" He shushed me. I was completely shocked. Not only is that insanely disrespectful and totally uncalled for, considering I was still trying to help him, but he sprayed spit in my face. Ew. So of course I go, "Excuse me?" And he does it again. I used to be such a pushover when I started 5 years ago. Something like this would have given me a panic attack. For some reason this time, though, I just snapped. I told him, "How dare you disrespect me? What makes you think you can treat people like that?" And this time he actually yelled at me to shut up. My manager, who was standing right there, of course, said and did absolutely nothing to defend his 5-foot disabled employee from this pathetic excuse for a respectable individual. Because of course. So I say, no, I won't shut up, and you won't be getting a refund, nor being served in this store again. You can leave. I then turned and called for security on my headset to come back me up. This idiot then had the gall to scoff and go, "You're seriously calling security, you lunatic?" And I go, "Yeah, of course I am, you're harassing me." Of course, he insists he's not harassing me. Can someone smell gas? "Your spit on my damn face begs to differ." Thankfully, security came and intimidated him into leaving. Ha! I later wrote up an incident report, and security got a recording of the incident too. One of my co-workers later identified him as a repeat thief, which doesn't surprise me. Side note, same co-worker witnessed and assisted in de-escalating the situation, then kept me company while I got some air afterwards. Props to him. He said he was proud of me for standing up to myself, but I don't know. I don't feel proud, I feel embarrassed. I'm just so beyond angry with the way I'm treated both by customers like him and by management, who are so incredibly spineless they allow jerks like this to keep doing what they do. By the end of it, despite this happening incredibly quickly, I was left physically shaking all over my body from stress. I had to walk away and take 15 minutes to get some fresh air and calm down. I feel like I very well could have handled this better, but I'm just sick of being treated like this. Guarantee you, he will be back, and there will continue to be no consequences to his actions. How would you have handled it? Thanks for listening to my little rant, if you made it this far. Curious if anyone else has had a similar incident. Hellfreezer's note. As my regular listeners know, I was in retail for almost 15 years. I had several incidents like this. Firstly, you did great. You did exactly what you should do. You do not let the customers walk all over you. You were polite, you were respectful, but you were firm. I think you did amazing. So good job. And don't be afraid to stand up for yourself in future. I wish more people in retail and customer service in general would do that. As you noted, this guy was apparently a repeat thief, so what probably happened here is you were never going to make this guy happy. He was just trying to con you and get the money for the card back. Likely he didn't even buy it anyway. I wouldn't be surprised. But maybe they have a way to track cards that have been stolen. It's been a while since I've worked in retail, so I'm not really sure how that sort of thing works these days. Either way, you keep doing you. 3. I sell sunglasses at a popular retail chain, and let me tell you, although I love so many things about my job, and while I now have a strong interest in shades and fashion, It just really annoys me when people keep asking about where the discounted items are and all that. Like, I get it, I really do. But it just annoys me how constant it can be. Additionally, what really annoys me is that while all of our shades are laid out in a clear and simple manner, arms are out, facing front, or in the drawers, they are folded and right side up, customers seem to not give a second thought in leaving shades they tried on across the counters, folded and put back on the shelf, where they are surrounded by other shades that have their arms open, making it obvious that they were put back incorrectly, since none of the others near them look like that, or in the drawers upside down. While it annoys me when people immediately start asking about our sales, I understand where they're coming from. We have some great brands and shades, and I don't want to not make a sale, nor do I want anyone unhappy. I love my job and I do enjoy and do it with purpose. We have signs, so I wish customers would read them, especially the one visible prior to entering the store. We have to approach customers when they walk in, build rapport, explain our sales, etc. And I get that they don't know we have to do that. That being said, I wish customers would give me a second to explain the sales before they start asking about it. I understand where they come from, it's just an irrational pet peeve of mine, but I do understand the other side. This may be more universal, but I hate when customers come in on the phone or when they FaceTime somebody while trying on shades. I understand why they do it, but it's annoying, and I don't want to feel like I'm disturbing their personal conversation. Even when I do have to greet them, build rapport, and explain our sales, I don't want to take too much of their time if they're clearly on the phone. But I do still have a job to do. Again, I know they don't know what I'm trained for, hence why I especially find it tough when they're on their phone. Also, the amount of people who say they'll be back just to never return is insane. I used to give them the benefit of the doubt of their word, but nowadays, unless they say they have something to do real quick, and they say yes to me holding on to a pair like at the register, I just assume they won't be back and I put things back. Even when they do say they will be back and they just have to do whatever and say yes to me holding on to the pair or pairs they have interest in, I usually give a 30-minute grace period. More if their excuse sounds like they might be a little longer, but still have clear interest and intent in buying, before I put things back. Not too long ago, my coworker and I were helping someone get something for their friend, and they were waiting on the friend's reply for the type of shades they wanted. We tried to match criteria that the customer mentioned while we helped them look, and we held on to many pairs. The guy said he'd do some shopping elsewhere while he waited for a reply and never returned. After helping others and waiting a while, we eventually put everything back. It makes the store not look professional and clean when there are empty slots where sunglasses should be, and when customers leave them scattered everywhere. Especially since it's a store that sells name brand, including many designer brand sunglasses. I've done the "I'll be back" excuse before, since I've genuinely meant it since starting this job, as I do want to expand my horizons, but for what it's worth, it was from one store to another location of the same store. Perhaps I've said I'd return without meaning it before I started the job, and I'm only now aware of that phrase now that I work where I do. I don't know. Maybe most people do tend to mean that or something similar, but given how often it happens, I have a hard time believing that. Most of the time they don't return, in my experience at least. And hey, hopefully it means they found something that they want even more. Regardless, it just annoys me when people say they'll be back, as most of the time they won't. Maybe they forget to return, I don't know. Some say they'll think about it, which also annoys me, but at least it's a nicer thing to say, as it at least gives me the impression that they will actually think about it. It makes me feel less crappy. It still is just another irrational thing that bothers me that, like everything else, I just feel the need to get off my chest. That's all we're doing here, just having a bit of a vent to make the day a bit lighter, that's all. Sometimes I feel like customers come in just to get first-hand info on a pair and see how they fit, just to then buy them from a third-party seller or another company. Like, I get it. I like to take note of model numbers too, but using me as an information source just to then buy them elsewhere is kinda disrespectful. Now, I respect the hustle, and saving money is key, but it doesn't mean it still doesn't hurt a bit to help them out just for them to buy it elsewhere. Again, I empathize, but it still sucks. I just hope they don't buy a pair from a suspicious website, or a used pair that also may be very well fake. If you want a good fake pair, fine. But it isn't fair for you to have to pay real pair prices for a fake. Thanks for listening. I hope I was able to explain some things well, and if you learned a thing or two, great. I don't mean any offense. I just want to rant about the little things that annoy me. I enjoyed being able to do this, and might again soon. Thanks, and have a great one. Hellfreezer's note, the only thing I'd add there would be the people that come in on their phone doing FaceTime, treat them as if you've got two customers. Just like they came in together, the other person can't be there, and they're on a shopping trip together. Obviously, I think in many cases they probably want the feedback and opinion of their friend on the phone, so treat them like they're in the store with you. Speak to them, ask them their opinion. Tell them they look especially handsome and try to sell them a pair of sunglasses. I'm suddenly missing my favorite sunglasses now. What was it Devil Dog or Dirty Dog was that name of the brand? I liked them. Really good polarization on them. Can't remember what happened. I know they got scratched up, but I don't know if they actually completely broke. But when I come to buy a new pair, well, I say a new pair, I had several pairs of sunglasses, just those ones were really, really good and I miss them. So I will get another pair like that, or whatever the closest equivalent is. I'm going to stop talking now. Bye. 4. So right around 12 years ago, I was working quite possibly the strangest string of jobs I've ever worked. My ex and I had a string of earth-shattering circumstances absolutely tear us down, and we would eventually find ourselves in the part of Ohio nicknamed the Mistake by a Lake. I was fresh out of the hospital due to a mental health crisis and doing my best to not only maintain some semblance of normalcy, but get us back to where we were originally living by saving up. The thing is, I found myself in that hellscape of a city for less than 24 hours before one of her relatives volunteered me to work for him on his construction site. The kicker is, he knew I had to follow up in my therapy, and he was one of those people who believed therapy was for the weak, especially if you were a male. And the general idea he had was that I would work for free. He basically threw me $40 at the end of the week, and it was just enough for me to pay for my medication, a few small cups of coffee, and if I got lucky, a bag of microwave burritos I could prep the night before working. To top that Sunday with the most bitter cherry possible, I was quite literally the only guy that wasn't under the influence of some sort of opiate. They would literally go out to their cars during breaks, crush up a few pills, snort them, and then go back to working on whatever job site they were on. After about 3 months of this, I threw my hands up and said enough was enough. I left early that morning and proceeded to go about things the old-fashioned way, and put in application after application. Mind you, my ex was pregnant with our son and due within 2 months tops, and the fact that I had essentially been working for us to stay in a room a little bit bigger than Harry Potter's, and wasn't able to save up for what we would need for our child was more than enough motivation for me to take everything that would have been given to me. That would come in the form of me getting a job working for one of the 4 major auto parts retailers in the States as a delivery driver. For those of you wondering, those places are AutoZone, Advanced Auto Parts, O'Reilly's, and Napa. Throw a dart at one of those company logos, and there's a 1 in 4 chance you'll get the right one. Ow, my foot. Now, I can complain all I want about the city. From my perspective, it's certainly earned its nickname, but working in that store was a breath of fresh air. The crew was basically a bunch of fun-loving guys who worked their butts off and genuinely wanted to see people succeed. They were everything a retail job should be, minus the armed guard who had to come in every night in order for us to count down registers. But as life happened, one thing led to another, and due to the crime rate, my son's mother and I eventually made arrangements to stay with a friend in our home state, and I had my job transferred to the local branch of the chain. Here's where the adventure portion of my story really goes into full swing. My first night on the job, I get to meet the parts manager, assistant manager, and shift manager. All 3 of those guys I knew from around town, and I'm still friends with them to this day. They just wanted to see if my training was up to par, and after they realized there was very little they would have to tell me, they just let me do my thing. We were unloading boxes of inventory that had been delivered earlier that morning, and the only time they had to tell me anything was if I asked where the spark plugs were, air filters were located. Different store, different layout. Overall, they were pretty satisfied with my work that night. They even went so far as to compliment my hustle. I got everything but a few flywheels and a radiator put up before the store had to close. The parts manager, Dave, pulled me aside and asked if I had gotten everything up. I told him there were a few parts on the cart when we closed for the night, but it was nothing I couldn't have up within a 10-minute time frame, first thing in the morning. He then proceeds to take a deep sigh before warning me about the store manager, Jack Hoff, and how he would more than likely blow a gasket, no pun intended, over a few parts. He thought he was running a tight ship, but in all honesty, he was one of those managers that was militaristic in nature, and doing this purely out of the fact that he was a phallus with ears and enjoyed the power. Dave advised me to try to come in 15 minutes earlier, and he would let me in order to get those parts up before Jack showed up. I shook his hand and thanked him for the heads up and made my way back home. The next morning I was making good time and right on track to show up within that 15-minute window, when about 2 miles from my destination I hit bumper-to-bumper traffic. Apparently one of the trucks hauling waste from one of the local chicken plants hadn't checked their intake and drove for several miles with it wide open, spilling chicken slurry all over the highway. The state police was in the process of setting up a detour, and for the time being, only one car could go at a time. I made it to work, on time, but by the skin of my teeth. And when I walk in, I'm not greeted with a hello, good morning, no, I'm greeted with, "Your transient butt has one more time to be lazy under my watch, and I'm gonna make your life a living hell." I see one of my co-workers in the back lift his head up from a box of air fresheners. He was putting up in an aisle, and he's giving me this look. I don't know how to describe it, but I would say surprised would be my best guess. I noticed this kid, probably early 20s, Wild Bill mustache goatee combo, dark slicked back brown hair, and he's wearing a pair of big wireless Sony headphones. He just stares at me for a moment and goes back to work. I looked at my manager and flat out said to him, "What do you mean lazy? Unless you're talking about the 5 boxes in the back marked morning shift, I got everything but a couple of flywheels and a radiator up last night. I even cleared out the spark plug box." "He did," yelled Dave from the back. "And today he's going to learn his delivery route, so I need him." The manager rolled his eyes and did one of those motions where you're waving somebody away with your palm facing the door. The whole time it was like he was just looking down at me. No apology, no admission of the whole thing being a misunderstanding. He was just acting like a drunken stepfather laying down the law shortly before reaching for his belt. The rest of the day went fairly well. We stopped doing deliveries around 5. My shift didn't end until 6. So Eric, the evening manager, showed me how to work the register and asked me how my first day was going. The first thing out of my mouth was how I was greeted when I walked in the door, and all Eric could say was, "Yeah, that guy's a tool. Word is he only got that job because he's friends with the district manager." That wasn't a red flag, that was a full-on circus tent right there. So if this guy pushed me to my limits, and I did eventually lose my cool, which, by the way, despite everything I was going through with my mental health, was still a rather hard feat to pull off, I would have to climb the corporate ladder until I could find somebody who would actually do something about it. Great. Fan-freaking-tastic. So for the next 2 months I would keep my head low, go on with my deliveries, and hope I would luck out during that last hour and Jack, the absolute meat biscuit, would have already clocked out for the day and left. More often than not, things would work out exactly this way, and there was no stopping that sentient urinal cake from leaving at the exact second the clock ticked 5 p.m. But oh boy, would he ream us if we pulled 3/4 of the crap he did. Leaving customers in the middle of a transaction, money on the back counter, with notes informing the active manager to finish counting. And it turns out none of this would have been approved by corporate. So, the evening before I finally quit this place, I had a chance to work with the kid in the earphones. I say kid, but he was really 24 or 25 years old. His name was Brian, He was a quiet kid, didn't make too much eye contact, and he never took off the headphones. Turns out he was never listening to music, never listening to anything. When I commented on the headphones, something along the lines of, "Those Sonys have some wicked bass boost." He smiled a bit while looking at his feet. He explained to me that he had high-functioning autism, and he had sensory issues. Anything from the electronic door chime to the whine of the cooling fan in the drink cooler caused him physical pain because he could hear the pitch. This also explained why whenever I did see him in the store between runs, he was normally stocking shelves or cleaning. As hard as he tried, he just didn't really resonate with people, and yet he'd been holding this position for over a year, putting up with Jack for over a year. Being armed with the knowledge I now had, I felt the utmost respect for Brian. Any retail job can be difficult, this one was truly retail hell, and all because of one absolute knob. The rest of the management saw Brian as an incredibly hard worker, had very little complaints other than they wished he would be a bit more comfortable with the customers, particularly during afternoon and weekend rushes, and when it came down to remembering where things were put, the parking lot staying clean, back areas being well arranged, Brian would get that stuff out of the way before anyone even had a chance to ask him. Needless to say, I was a bit angry when Jack came in for the day and all he could do was trash talk about us, myself and Brian, during the majority of the day. Deliveries had been a bit slow that day, mostly due to the snowfall we were experiencing at the time, so I was asked by my parts manager to help him go through the invoices and ready some of our usual deliveries so they would be good to go whenever anybody called, if they called. It was honestly so slow that the assistant manager recommended sending some people home because over the period of time I've been there, I could count all the customers on one hand. We had a snowstorm coming, it was going to be fierce, and we weren't making any money. Finally, we had a customer come in, she was a woman, who I'd guess was in her early 30s. She was coming in looking for all-weather wiper fluid, and windshield wiper blades that were fit for snowy weather. Looking through our big window, I could see she was driving a Range Rover, so I hopped to it and looked up her info in order to get her fitted with the appropriate blades. While I'm doing this, I hear a deep sigh behind me, and I turn to see Jack rolling his eyes. "The wiper blades are over here, numbnuts," he says, and walks over to the shelf and pulls up a couple of random packages. "They're a universal fit, which means they'll go on any vehicle." I cocked an eyebrow in disbelief. I looked at the customer, and she had the look of absolute shock on her face. My manager called me numbnuts in front of a customer, and he did it like he was telling somebody to have a nice day. Not a care in the world. I mean, after all, what were they going to do? He was an overgrown nepo baby with friends in high places. I asked him if he wanted to take over the sale since he already had the wiper blades in hand. "At least I'll sell her the right stuff." I nodded and told him I was going on break. As I'm sitting there waiting for my hot pocket to warm up, Wayne, the assistant manager, comes over to me and apologizes for the way he behaved. "No offense, man. It's not up to you to apologize. I'm not mad at you. We're all kind of dealing with this, aren't we?" He patted me on the shoulder and told me to go home. The snow was getting bad, and he had managed to talk Jack into sending me and Brian home for the rest of the day, because we weren't really getting anything done. Mind you, up until this point, I was still employed by this business, but when I got home, I walked into the living room of our friend's house, and my son's mom is cradling him in her arms. He's really fussy, like sick baby fussy. She's got this look of worry, and I asked her what was going on. At this point, our son was about 18 months old, give or take. I noticed he's rubbing his ear, and I'm thinking to myself, ear infection. "I gave him some baby Tylenol about half an hour ago, and his fever still hasn't gone down. He's been like this for a couple of hours," she says with a look of concern that is steadily getting worse. I look out the window, the snow is getting heavier, and thankfully, we're less than 10 minutes away from the hospital. It was pushing close to 5 p.m. at this point, and we decided to make sure our little man was bundled up enough to not get chilled, but not enough to be overheated. We hop in my beater of a Ford Tempo and head out to the hospital. Within that short time frame, I could see my son getting worse, and there is no worse feeling for a father to see their child in legitimate pain and knowing that they have no way to communicate what's wrong. We get into the emergency room, and they're quick to get us in the back. I don't think we were there half an hour before a nurse came in with a thermometer. Our son was running a 105.3 fever. Most of us don't need to be medical professionals to realize how dangerous a temperature that can be, especially to an 18-month-old infant. It didn't take the doctor long to come in after her, and he let us know that we weren't going anywhere until our son's temperature dropped to a safe level. Fair enough, on the same page. It was pushing 1 a.m. when my son's temperature started to drop below 102. At nearly 3 a.m. we were being discharged, but there was a catch. The doctor and the nurse informed us that we couldn't go anywhere until the parking lot was plowed. Apparently, the snow had fallen so greatly that the entire state-funded fleet had been plowing the highway, and most important back roads and parking lots all night. We didn't have to wait that long. It only took about an hour to an hour and a half before the parking lot was traversable. Doctors checked our son's temperature one more time at our request, and he was finally below 100. Knowing we could at least get out to the highway and that our son was out of the water, so to speak, we all piled back into my car and got ready to head back to our friend's house. Only to find we had no access to the road going there because the plows hadn't made it quite that far yet. So I called my sister, who was about 20 minutes away, and right off the highway, and apologized for waking her up. After explaining the situation, she told us to come by the house and crash on her couch in order to get some rest. After driving cautiously and taking a bit of extra time to get there, we arrived, and son and his mom go inside first. My sister shows them to the guest bedroom and grabs a pack and play so our son has a place to sleep. I smell the coffee in the kitchen and proceed to sit at the table. I'm bushed, my sister can tell. She asks me if I had to work today, and I nod in the affirmative. She has 2 words for me: call out. I didn't have to tell her I was practically seeing double due to being exhausted. It was written all over my face. I told my sister I had to wait until 7:15, to go ahead and call out, and I would crash on her couch after that. And that is exactly what I did. I called in, and the assistant manager answered the phone. It was just him and my parts manager, and I explained the situation. Both of them told me to get some rest and that it wasn't a big deal. They wished my son well, and I figured that was that. Well, it turns out I was wrong. It's not even 8 a.m. and my cell phone starts buzzing. I look down and I see it's work calling. Begrudgingly, I answer because I've got this gut feeling I know who it is. And damned if I wasn't right. "Where the hell are you? You're supposed to be here. We've got a ton of orders going out." I'm half dead. Sounds are hurting me. I'm seeing double. At this point, I'm pretty sure I see dead people. Filter off. Look, I was at the hospital all night with my child. He had a dangerous temperature, and I can't stress dangerous enough. I don't think we're going to have a lot of orders today, considering most of the roads still haven't been plowed. Can you tell me how many people are in the store other than you, Dave, and Wayne? First off, I don't give a crap about what went on last night. Let your son's mother take care of him. Secondly, it's just the 3 of us here. But the 3 of us made it out here, so you can do it too. Be here in half an hour or suffer the consequences. I growled. I think I growled loud enough for him to hear, and then I opened my mouth. Consequences. You're openly admitting to not caring about the fact that my son's temperature was so high he could have gone into a coma or worse, and you want me to come in and deliver parts in a little Nissan Versa on roads that are not only still covered in snow, but iced over and treacherous because they are still plowing. I had to go to my sister's house because we couldn't get home. I literally just fell asleep. I can't see straight. I'm not taking my life into my hands for you or the company. And besides, I was already told by the other 2 managers there was a good chance there wouldn't be any deliveries today. I'll come in, but it won't be until tomorrow. He proceeded to make another attempt at berating me, and all I did was hang up my phone and put it on airplane mode. The next day I come in. Wayne is standing there, and he's got this look on his face. He hands me my schedule, and before he hands it to me, he says Jack made alterations. I look down at it, and over a 14-day period, I'm scheduled for 7 hours. That is 3.5 hours for 2 days out of 14. I look at Wayne, and he just mouthed, "Sorry." Jack sees me and proceeds to come around the corner with his chest all puffed out like a wannabe military officer.
I told you there would be consequences, and there you go. You don't want to be a team player, you don't get the hours of a team player.
My eye starts twitching. I feel my blood pressure rising. I start hearing Mudvayne rising in my ears. Yes, I was so determined. In front of the entire staff, in front of the customers in the store, I ball up my schedule, take off my name tag and toss it in the trash can by the door, and I let him have it with both barrels.
You absolute clown, you act like this is a military school. Wake up call, you sell auto parts. You think you're hot because you're buddy-buddy with the district manager? You treat us like crap. Don't know your butt from your elbow, it's like you get turned on from humiliating us.
Please open your mouth. Say something stupid. Tell me that I'll never work at another one of these stores again. Oh no, minimum wage and guys like you on power trips, whatever will I do? Do me a favor, Jack. Fish my name tag out of the trash, and then jam it up your butt sideways. Eat me. I quit. I drove home fully expecting an argument, and instead came back to my son's mother quite confused. I explained to her what happened. She was aware of the phone call the day before. Thankfully, she was getting ready to start working at her job again, as her maternity leave was going to be up soon. So we just tightened up our belts for a little bit. I took on some odd jobs here and there to help pad out the income a bit, but for the most part, I was a stay-at-home dad. I was lucky enough to see my son's first steps, hear his first words, and catch the first time he cursed. That one was not on me. Thank you, Uncle Wade. A couple of times after quitting, my friends, son's mother, son, and I are all out having dinner at a local diner when Dave comes up to my table. Hey there, my friend, your boy's getting big. If I'm not interrupting anything, care to join me up front for a cigarette? I gotta tell you something you're gonna get a kick out of. I excuse myself and follow him out front. While we're sitting there, smoking, he tells me I missed the fireworks. Turns out that the customer came back to the store. You know, the one he sold the fluid and wiper blades to. Turns out she came in to do a bit more shopping. This time she was just looking for a novelty license plate frame. This time around, Jack couldn't be bothered to help her. After all, I put him in his place earlier that day, quite publicly. Gave him a taste of his own medicine. Of course he'd be in the huff. Unfortunately, he spent the rest of his shift taking it out on Brian. He uses this woman looking around like she's asking for help, and instead of walking around from behind the counter, he looks over at Brian and screams out, "Hey, Sped, stop listening to your queer boy music band and help that woman out." "Real nice, Jack. We all know he's autistic, super classy. You're a jackass." Wayne yelled out from the back loud enough for everybody in the store to hear him. She stops looking at the items on the shelves, says nothing, and walks out to her car. From what Dave told me, she looked like she was seconds away from unleashing hell on Jack. She sits in her car, pulls out her phone, and from what Dave tells me, was out there for about an hour talking to somebody. You see, one of many things I learned during training was that this particular corporation employs secret shoppers. They pose as customers and report back to corporate, not the district manager, not the regional manager, corporate. And that's exactly what she was doing, reporting John using ableist slurs against an autistic employee, selling her the wrong parts after taking over the sale from an employee who was going about matching her up with what more than likely would have been the correct part, and just being an out-and-out piece of crap to everybody in the store, customers included. Dave continued with his recollection while taking a drag and smiling. She never even left the parking lot. She just waited, and eventually this really nice sports car pulls up, and out steps an older gentleman in a nice suit and heavy wool trench coat. The secret shopper walked over to him, handed him a clipboard with what he could guess was a report she'd filled out. He looked at it, pulled a pen out of his pocket, signed off on it, then stormed into the building. The secret shopper followed suit and pointed at Brian. The man walks up to him and makes sure he can be seen. He doesn't shake his hand, doesn't attempt to put a hand on him, keeps his voice calm and apologizes. At first, Dave thought he was doing damage control until he got to look at his body language. The guy was genuinely upset for Brian. He asked him if he needed anything, and Brian mutters under his breath, "A boss that doesn't call me Sped, Tart, or Special Boy would be a nice start." That was all this guy needed to hear. Dave tells me that this guy turned around and he was so red he made Satan look anemic, and a vein in his forehead was bulging. He stormed over to Jack and made him remove his name tag, all while berating him. Second time of the day that floppy donkey dingaling got a taste of his own medicine, and it's a wonder he didn't overdose. Not only did he get chewed out, fired, and escorted off the premises, after he left, the corporate representative stayed back and took statements from everybody. Turns out after everything came out in the wash, nobody with half a brain would hire him. It had gotten to the point where word about his treatment spread all over our little town like a rotten infestation. I would run into him a few years later. At first I didn't think he recognized me, but as I sat there at the bar with my friend, who came back from active duty, and we enjoyed a couple of beers while catching up, we both distinctly heard Jack tell the bartender to spit in my drink. Joke's on you, Jack, bartender's my cousin. He became one of our town's bitter drunks that would blow whatever savings and retirement he had on the drink. He'd been kicked out of several in the area because he was just a mean, drunken dick who had done nothing better than to pound a few back and instigate. Yeah, he was a real putz. But I don't hate the guy. I mean, close enough, but not enough to say hate. That's it. That's my story. Sorry it was so long, but that's actually the abridged version. So this is a message to all those bosses out there who work a retail job, a fast food joint, or something that most of us would call a job but not a career. Whether you're selling brake shoes, burgers, or bags of chips, stop treating that place like the Pentagon. It's a shop. You're a shopkeep. Your employees are people. Situations arise, and they'd be more prone to work with you if you're not working against them. Sad sacks like Jack are a dime a dozen. Get off your high horse and make a genuine effort to get to know your employees and not treat them like crap the moment they walk through the door. Unless they do something that warrants that type of treatment, and I'm talking embezzlement or a serious crime, talk to them, find out what's going on, and if you have to let them go without incident. Don't be a douche canoe. 5. So I'm a supervisor in a gelato shop in one of our major shopping centers, and we get all types of people coming in. During the weekdays, it's mostly shopping center workers or more regular customers who know the entire expense of our products and know what they want the moment they step into the shop. Our company is not exactly well organized, so unfortunately, but ironically, we often don't have our signature flavors in stock, one of which is pistachio. It's quite unique in the way it's made, and 90% of the time a customer coming in will ask about it. When we don't have it, we just have to apologize that it's out of stock, and offer the customer a different flavor. Enough backstory. Last week, this woman comes in. She was very typically Italian, and very clearly entitled because she strode in with the aura of, bow down and serve me. You know the type. She doesn't greet me after I say, ciao, buongiorno. She also doesn't even glance at the options in the vitrine once, before very confidently stating that she'll have a medium cup of just the pistachio. I explained to her politely that we do not have the pistachio, and here's roughly how that conversation went. I'm having a medium cup pistachio. Sorry, madam. We don't currently have the pistachio. Can I offer this flavor here instead? It's nutty and... no. I don't want that flavor. I want the pistachio. As I mentioned already, we just don't have the pistachio right now, sadly. That's ridiculous. I know you have some in the back, so go get it for me, please. Thank you. Me at this point restraining a string of intense cursing. We actually don't have it, not in the front, and also not in the back. We haven't had it for 3 weeks, so I'm sorry, but there's genuinely nothing I can do about getting you the pistachio. She's now glaring at me. That's absolutely unacceptable. How can you not have pistachio? How can you run a business like this? It's not in my control, madam, unfortunately, so I can offer you a different flavor instead. No, absolutely not. You're going to call one of your branches and have them deliver me pistachio here. Ladies and gents, at this point I was becoming a victim of my lack of patience, and I have no clue how I didn't kick the woman out. Mind you, she was not using disrespectful language to me personally, but the entitlement to demand that one of my colleagues from an entirely different store had to travel in the hottest yet weather we had in the UK, with a 10-liter tray of gelato, was infuriating. That's not possible, I'm afraid. I can call to ask if someone has pistachio so you can travel to get it, but no one can... No! Someone will bring it here. I'm going to be around for an hour, so make it quick, okay? Again, I can't do that. At this point, I can either offer you another flavor, or you can have yourself a nice day. Excuse me? You're excused, madam. Lovely to see you. Looking forward to having you when we have pistachio. Have a nice day. At this point, she left, probably attempting to salvage some form of pride. Never saw her again. Surprise. We now have pistachio. Hellfreezer's note, which is good because I've been having a craving for a few days. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Adventures in Fast Food and Retail, episode 206. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please do hit the like button and share the video with friends and family. And if you'd like early access to the videos, you'll get them all on the Monday all at once. Then you can support me on my Patreon page for as little as $1 or more a month. You'll also find links in the description to the Hellfreezer merchandise store on Teespring, as well as a link to the Hellfreezer Discord. And if you really like today's video, then you can leave a tip for that by clicking on the heart with a $sign underneath. That is never required, but I very much do appreciate it, and it really does help. Okay, no other bits and bobs today, so let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is... Tell me something good that happened to you today. Unfortunately, I can't answer that question because I've only been up a few hours and not a lot's happened. Something annoying did happen where I was trying to get a delivery slot on Amazon Fresh, and I tried for an hour and couldn't. I tried for several hours yesterday and I couldn't either, because they're apparently shutting down their Fresh search section. So they're really busy because everything's really cheap, and those delivery slots are just getting snapped up real quick. So that's been my day so far, but why don't you let me know what you think in a comment below. And before we go, let's have the answer of the day from a previous video. And this was in relation to things being inexplicably expensive. And today's answer comes from Queen Wilco. Health and beauty products do this all the time. A cuticle or nail oil in a tiny polish-shaped bottle will be from $3 to $20, while it's literally just a natural oil from plants that costs $6 for a large 20-ounce bottle. Thank you very much for your answer, Queen Wilco. And with that, I'm gonna head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.